Thank you all for coming. Being kind of the first time, can I see here? So some of the things what we want to try and talk about here, and really kind of conversationally. So as you guys have questions, you can ask us. Careers that are available, paths to that are career, like, maybe the panelists can talk about your specific path to your career. Skills employers seek, professional and personal skills that they might be seeing in the arts, and then keys to success in the field. Okay, those are kind of the things we thought we'd want to talk about. Feel free to kind of just ask questions. So where would we like to start? Let's go with maybe your paths to your careers. I think if we can hear that journey.
Path
to your path to being an architect.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Got to go back to high school. When I was in high school, I was not super artistic, but I kind of fell into some architecture classes, and really didn't know what I wanted to study, honestly, when I went to college, and I just applied to architecture school, and I got in, and within 6 months I think I was hooked. So I kind of fell into it. I wasn't one of these people who said I've always wanted to be an architect since I was 5 years old or something, but when I got into it, I realized that where I went to school, they really tried to unteach people from what they thought of architecture was, because everybody came to it with preconceptions and pretty much probably wrong stuff. And I went to a school that was based on a Bauhaus curriculum, which is very interdisciplinary. In the School of Architecture that I went to school in Virginia, at Virginia Tech, and we had pottery and ceramics and printmaking and photography and woodworking and metal making and all sorts of things within our curriculum, because they really believed in a real cross-disciplinary approach to design. And so that's really when I started getting very interested in sort of artistic endeavor of the profession. And so from there I graduated and I got a job in Chicago, and I've been here ever since. But it's been quite a journey.
Nice. We'll do questions after then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can have questions.
Okay, cool. So like I kind of said in the introduction, I started my photography career here, I guess, senior year of high school. That was my very first photography class with Lindy Novotny. And I wish I'd started the program sooner. I was definitely one of those students. I took all the classes that I was supposed to take. Had to get straight A's. Needed to be in all the AP classes. And it wasn't until my senior year that I sort of let myself take an art class, and I really wanted to do photography. I'd always wanted to do it. And then senior year I decided, you know what, I'm not going to take a science class this year. And it was like a huge, oh my gosh, what, you're not going to take a science class? That's crazy. Why would you do that? And I'm so glad I did it. I just wish that I had done it earlier. And then by the time I went to college at Columbia College, I was learning all of the programs that the kids here in this program at OPRF are now learning. So anyone in this program now is going to be way ahead of what I was learning when I was in college, and that wasn't really, it wasn't that long ago. I graduated in 2009. So this program is great, and like I said, I just wish I had started it freshman, sophomore year, so I would have been even more advanced in my sort of art world than I was by the time I went to college. So after graduating from Columbia College, I did a lot of freelance photography. I worked for a few newspapers doing stories for them and magazines. And then at some point I realized I had this passion for photography, and I also had this passion for gardening and growing vegetables and flowers. And so now in my career, what I've been able to do is kind of marry those two passions. And so I work at a farm and manage all the vegetable and flower production, but then I also run the social media. So I'm always out there taking photos, and I do write a lot of content for our website and social media and everything. So I'm really able to do both of those in my job. And photography has been really helpful. It was a helpful way to get the job, even though, I mean, the main focus is the production and the growing and teaching gardening to children and stuff like that. But I think a major thing of when I was interviewing for the job was, hey, I can also have all of these other skills. I can write, I can take pictures, I can do all these things. So I was able to offer a little bit more than someone who maybe was just coming from a horticulture background. So I think for me that was it was helpful to have both sides. So that's where I am now, and I love it.
I was one of those people who knew what I wanted to do from about 5 years old. I knew I wanted to be like a car designer, and followed it up from there. And so my path was a little different. Through high school, I took as many art classes as I could, and honestly, my only regret is that I didn't take them all. Freshman year, I knew the colleges that I wanted to go to. Junior year, I had done a pre-college, which I highly recommend if you are that kind of person who thinks they know what they want to do. Go take a summer class. You'll figure out the lay of the land really fast. You'll know if it's really what you want to do without sinking a ton of money into it. And for me, it only kind of strengthened my convictions of what I wanted to be. And then I graduated from here after doing AP Studio Art and all these classes, and went to College for Creative Studies in Detroit, which is one of the 2 or 3 good automotive design programs. Went through 4 years there, and it's graduated with a bachelor's in fine arts, but it's much more of a vocational school, and for me that's okay. You do get a liberal arts education, but from essentially the word go, you are in a studio, a semester-long studio. You have projects. They're sponsored by major companies, and you figure out real fast whether it's something you want to do based on the fact that you're working 120 hours a week, never sleeping, and it's rewarding when you get out if it is what you want to do. And like I said, you find that out real fast. I graduated in 2014 after interning at the place I work now and Radio Flyer. Then I worked at Mercedes-Benz truck studio in Portland. And then now I'm here at Tangent Design, which is an industrial design firm, and we have clients that range from Ford, Shelby, Airstream, Yamaha, Swingline, which is office products. And I do what I did in school, which is draw. And so that's another thing. If it's something you really feel passionate about, do it all the time. Do it in the side of your notes in math class, which is what I did. So yeah, that's kind of, I can speak to where I got. I know it's not everyone's path. A lot of people are still trying to figure things out, but that's what I got.
Well, I wanted to go to CCS, but I I didn't have enough experience, so I ended up at University of Michigan. And when I got there, I had never heard of what graphic design was, so that was part of an education. They take you through the basic studio classes pretty quick, so you get a chance to find out all the stuff that you learned in high school and I learned in college. After getting a BFA, I stayed in Ann Arbor and had some freelance work that came out of like a sponsored project class. And so I got to keep working and stay in town, and but I hadn't gotten much of a production background of like how to actually produce this stuff from my strongly theory-based school. And so I learned all that stuff from printers. So I would say that you can learn a lot from people in the industry that, that are outside of the specifics of, design or, and that also that freelancing can be a path to getting a full-time job. When I moved to Chicago, I didn't really know that freelancing was the way that everybody got a job, like a full-time job. So I'd go to a lot of interviews and they'd say, "Can you freelance?" And I was just thinking about that rent check. And then I found out that that's what everybody does is you freelance for a little while and then you get, it's like a you know, an on-the-job internship. And so that was, the way that I ultimately got, full-time work before I, started my own thing, so.
So I'm going to actually share my story too a little bit. So when I was a really horrible high school student, horrible, and didn't plan on going to college, but I loved all the art programs. I took every art class I could. They actually had to send me down to junior college because I took everything, but I was responsive in no other class. And so I just never thought college was for me. And after a year out, my gap year, which was actually used repairing elevators, I decided that I think better than this and I'm more creative than this. And so there was an art college in my hometown called Kendall College of Art and Design. I was able to get in there with the work that I kind of did on my own. And but in doing that, it's a private college. My mom couldn't help me pay for it, so she's like, you're going to be spending a lot of money on your college. You've got to be able to come out of there and make money. What are you going to do? So we looked at what they had to offer. I just wanted to be an artist, but she's like, you've got to maybe graphic design. I think would be good for you. So I went through the visual communications program there, graduated and got a job in doing graphic design. I was doing a lot of sales materials, corporate identity work, and annual report design. And then I moved down here to do more of it, to get in a bigger market. And so I did that, and I actually ended up, the end of that career was doing in-store merchandising, advertising for like Sega Genesis and Coca-Cola and Hewlett-Packard, all the stuff you see when you go into like Toys R Us or a Office Depot, all the graphics around there. I was designing a lot of that stuff, but I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable, and I loved working with kids, and I wanted to be a fine artist. So I found this art program down at UIC, an art education program, and I literally quit one day, and I actually went in the morning just like, I'm sorry, I quit. And I left and went down there, enrolled in there, and I haven't looked back. And now I've been teaching for going on 21 years now. And even within that career path, I found community-based artwork, actually as a way to kind of engage my kids in the classroom. So I was working in the inner city for a long time, and getting them off the streets in the summer was attractive to them and me, and doing this. And so now my art form is doing very large-scale murals around the city and around the country, actually, and for here now in the community. And I haven't looked back. And so my story is one of, because you will have these conversations with your kids as what are you going to do? How are you going to make money? This is depending on where you go, this is an expensive program. What are we going to do, right? And so those discussions are real, and they're important. And so this is mine, just one other story that kind of add to theirs. So I think I'm going to open it up to you guys to ask questions. Raise your hand. I can call so we do it orderly. Sure.
It's good, Joan, auto here. So, what if you have a child that loves drawing, but maybe they're not trying hard? Maybe it's a place for someone to go where they absolutely drawing, and is that, or is it specifically?
No,
Types of drawing?
it's broad. I mean, it depends on the drawing. I mean, there are illustration careers. Going to art school, I now have friends that are in every discipline. Friends that are illustrators that do stuff for the New York Times, if that's the kind of work. And illustration is insanely broad in terms of what you can do. As far as design, which is a little bit different, it's a combination of, let's say, functional thinking and drawing and aesthetic sense. There is an entire umbrella. Industrial design is one, and that's kind of where I fall under. There's cars, there's anything that you see needs a designer. So shoes is one big one, and that's very specific. Product design, which again falls under industrial, which can be anything from phones, glasses, there's fashion. So yeah, it depends, and it depends sort of. I was never one of the really artsy people. I like to sort of draw what I saw, realistic stuff when I did do fine art, and so that's kind of why I think I had more of a design mind. So it really depends on how he thinks and what he's looking to do. if it wants something practical, design's great. If you want to just draw whimsical things, illustration is wonderful. There's a whole umbrella of stuff. Graphic design is another side to that. You can speak more of too. Probably less drawing, but
Less drawing, thank God.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Can I add
same
something
sensibilities.
to her?
Sure.
She's got more.
Yeah.
Question about product design. I was really interested because it's such a big umbrella. And my son is in love with Shark Tank. So there's a major he's interested in college. So that these new colleges are fusing three majors together: design, technology, and entrepreneurship. And so it seems to me that there's a big chop right in between working for a big company, creating products like cars or
Right.
Knoll furniture, right, or big
Yeah.
panels or lighting, right? There's just so many of those big companies. How much physics and math and
Zero.
intensity? Okay,
Zero.
okay.
Let's clarify something here for everybody, because this is a lot of things. There's a lot of things that my school had a problem with. My advisor didn't understand what design was. He thought I wanted to be an engineer. You are not an engineer. You are not learning math. You are not learning science. You are drawing. You are sitting down and you are using your brain to apply the aesthetic sensibilities that you have to something. You
Okay.
work with engineers in conjunction with engineers, and so you need to speak that language, but this is not an engineering degree. So
Got it.
inventor is combining all of those things, but as if you're a designer, you're drawing.
Yeah, that's a separate field.
Okay. Got it.
So I'd like to ask this question and get the opinion of many of you. Is that, I know with a degree as a BFA, sometimes a BA, how worthy is that in the industry? Because I know sometimes maybe they think that a degree is okay, but the talent might be more than a BFA or a BA. Is there some kind of thinking on that level?
In my industry, the degree is absolutely worthless. You have a work sample, and if your work is good, you're getting a job, and if it isn't, you're not getting a job. That's
But
my experience. Sorry.
That's true, but at the same time, when you're in school, sometimes you don't get to take the classes that will help you get portfolio samples until you get closer to the end. So having a degree, kind of gets you into those classes unless you're gonna, have an internship where you get some
Right.
work samples. And an internship's a great idea because you do kind of get the idea of like what a real work situation is, that you're not designing, well, I don't know, I mean, I guess I could have it as a goal that someone will once ask me to design something that relates to Paul Rand's work in the 1950s, but it's always about their business. And so being able to, get some hands-on work sometimes happens towards the end of a degree, and a BFA compared to a BA means you're really focused on at least the last time I checked, on the, having more art classes, more art design classes.
Good, David, how about you guys? Is that?
I think in terms of photography, it really depends on what you want to do. If someone were just to want to freelance and say if they wanted to start a wedding photography business or something like that, a lot of people do that without going to school at all for that, which is fine. You can definitely do that. But if you're looking to get a job more in, like let's say one of my friends from Columbia College now works at the Art Institute, and she photographs their collections, their art collections, and I don't think she would have been hired without some sort of degree, So I think it just depends on what sort of field you want to get into. But the other thing about going to a school and not just starting with no, previous experience or maybe doing it in high school, but specifically going to an art college, is that you also make connections, like interdisciplinary connections, which I think can be really important, and that especially can help with getting those freelance jobs after college. That, hey, your graphic design friend knows someone who needs a photographer, so that's great for me because then I get work from you and you get work from me, and that kind of thing that might not, it's a little bit harder to make those connections outside of that school environment.
David, how about?
Architecture is a little different because you have to have a professional degree to become an architect, so, and there's different ways to do that. I went to a 5-year professional program. There are other schools that have a 4-year bachelor's, and then you have to go to 2-year master's program to get that professional degree, but, so it is a little different for the architects. Architecture also involves some math, a little bit of engineering, but it's not being an engineer. It's more like what you said, you have to learn enough to be able to talk
Yeah.
to the people that.
I work
the
with engineers every day.
Yeah.
I speak the language, but I'm not an engineer.
Right,
Yeah.
so I took a lot of classes, I don't do that kind of math in my daily profession anymore. So,
For the, you're an industrial design?
Yeah.
And obviously there's your drawing abilities will bolster you and enable you to advance in this. I'm finding in my field, which is architecture, that online is really just the start of it, and it is all entirely 3D computer, and that you're completely dependent on the computer right now. And so I was, and I work with people that absolutely couldn't trust it, that they could model anything.
There's absolutely modeling degrees that you can get in my field. To say that having to draw is the only thing you can do, absolutely not. You can go to get an industrial design essentially degree and be a modeler. Drawing helps, gets you in the door, but it also depends on what you want to do. At the firm I work at, we're probably 25% 2D and 75% 3D. I just happen to do the 2D. That's what I wanted to do.
But you're not anchored by it.
No, not at all. I mean, I can do 3D as well. That's you learn the entire sort of discipline, and then you figure it out pretty quick. Usually, if you can't draw, you're in 3D, and if you like to draw and you're good at it, you're in 2D.
Is that a skill that you learn in school or professional?
What's that? Sorry, say again.
Does the school experience help you with the 3D, or is it on the job?
Oh no, the school does. School will teach you a modeling program. Absolutely, you have to learn that in conjunction. At school, I mean, I can pass this around at some point. I brought my old school portfolio, and there are 3D models in here that you go through. So in a studio situation, at least in my school, you start with storyboarding, graphic design related research. You have to be kind of good at graphic design too. It just so happens that that's part of the game. You sketch, everyone sketches, and then you model, everyone models. Usually you figure out where you fall. Sometimes some people are savants and they're just good at all of it. Some people are much better at sketching, modeling not so much. Some people love modeling, not so much sketching. You kind of figure that out at school. They absolutely teach you. And modeling's a good strong career, probably hiring more than 2D designers right now, but 2D's not going to be phased out ever, so.
Other questions?
I have more for you. So could you talk a little bit about that summer program for your college?
Okay, yeah, that's good. So I did College for Creative Studies pre-college program, and so I kind of knew what I wanted to do early on, and I found some schools. Art Center is another one in Pasadena, but College for Creative Studies offered a summer pre-college program. You go, you pick a discipline, and it's kind of a broader. In this one, there's like fine art, design, sculpture. I did design, and so that we did like 2 weeks of car, a week of product, and a week of interior design, which is a whole other animal that you can jump into. And it's very intensive, and it's a good preview for what you're going to be doing and whether you want to do it. And it really did solidify how I felt, and it solidified the school I was going to, and I can't recommend it. I'm sure Columbia College has those. I did pre-college classes at SAIC downtown in Chicago, all throughout high school. They're really good. They're definitely things you should explore if you're serious about this.
Can I address something that nobody ever talks about? It's like, because I work as a location manager in television commercials, and you know, if you're not in the union, you don't have any security at all. Like my husband has a pension, and he's my insurance guy, right? So I'm able to do what I want and travel everywhere because of him, basically. But before that, I didn't have insurance. Until I was 40, I didn't have insurance. And so I just wondered, I know that some of you are with firms, and do you know, and some of you are freelancers, and so how do you deal with that, basically, the insurance, the pension, the retirement, you know, because you're starting out at a certain salary, and then you have to work that way, you might have kids, you know, housing is expensive in some of these cities, you know, it's kind of like they never talk about that. I know it's something not to do with art, but it is to do, because
Well, when I first moved here, I freelanced, and so I didn't have insurance. I told my dad not to worry, I'd just be a ward of the state, which of course, I'm surprised he didn't have a heart attack right then. But, so there's independent arts organizations like Chicago Artists Coalition. There's Alumni Association is another way. I heard at one point there used to be this thing called the Affordable Care Act, even as a small business though, which is what I have, you don't need more than 2 or 3 people to get, a small group insurance, and so, so that's how, we insure, how I insure a family is through that. But there are some independent organizations, because individual policies are kind of insane,
Right.
really, they're difficult.
Yeah, my company offers insurance, 401k, things like that. Smaller firms don't always, so due diligence. If you're young, you're usually healthy, but, that's not always a guarantee. But, if you're going into design, a lot of, you do work for corporate, a lot of larger companies. I have
Right.
friends at Ford and GM, and they get everything, all benefits packages, stock. So it depends. If you are gonna be freelance, then yeah, that is a very, very real possibility that you might not have those things. But
Right.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat as you. My nonprofit, it's a nonprofit that I work for, and we're really small. We're only 5 people, and so my insurance is through my husband also,
Right.
unfortunately.
So you gotta get married.
To the right person.
The right person.
Yeah. And my firm's 35 people, so we have
Right,
a
right.
complete package, so.
So no one's starving insureless.
But it could be a real thing, especially coming out of school, and if you're freelancing.
In Illinois though, right, you still get insurance. You can be on your parents' insurance until
Till
you're
26,
27, which I
27.
which I did.
25, so I'm still riding that train.
That was
Which I
really
highly
nice.
recommend you do.
Yeah, right,
Until
why not?
until you
Yeah.
go work for a company, but
So you're gonna get married in a couple of years.
Yeah.
working on it.
Yeah, just, could you give us a sense, if you think back to your peer group in college, what percentage of those peers are making a living in the arts, or based upon that training?
All the people that I knew,
Yeah, I was gonna say 100
Yeah.
or close.
yeah.
From my friends at Columbia College, I would say, I don't know, maybe 70%. And I don't know anyone who's out on the streets or anything, but they might be doing something not art related. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the artistic field is very broad, so you could, it's
Right.
almost say 100%, but I'd say for architects, it's probably 80%.
Thank you.
There's a lot of jobs that you can get that aren't necessarily like if you went to study graphic design, that's the job you have to have. You could, you could be an art director, you could be an illustrator, you could be a production manager, there's a lot of bandwidth and just about any of, these jobs. So someone that I went to art school with, now started a company designing fiber art and but the yarn itself, so he sells the yarn, but so there's a lot of things you can do besides living in your parents' basement.
Yeah, when you get this profession, even I worked for Auto Week magazine as an editorial intern, writing about cars, just from what I did and who I knew, which was a totally weird aside of a job that I didn't end up enjoying all that much, but it opens up so many other alleys if you're artistically talented. I work as a designer, but I do some photography on the side. I do freelance illustration on the side. There are endless alleys for you to make money and market yourself. So
There's an article on the blog about this idea of globalization and the automation of a lot of manufacturing and how they're replacing people with machines. The creative field is one place that can't really happen, right? You want to speak to that, but it's the creative thought, design. Again, when we talk about, do you need to draw really well to get into any of these professions? Not necessarily, right? It depends on the profession you're kind of going after. So it's not necessarily that you can draw, but you have a good sense of design. You have some sort of artistic eye that a machine will never ever replace, right? And so,
And no matter how many, there's no software that has the drop-down menu that says like the best idea ever. But
Yeah.
I keep looking. But, so that's not something that can just get teched out.
I can't agree with that more, by the way.
Kind of, this could have been answered earlier, and then it kind of goes along with maybe being phased out or not. My daughter is going into photography, my oldest daughter is also a photographer. Her biggest complaint is everybody in their eyes phones, and they think they're great photographers. And a lot of the photo jobs are kind of phased out, there's not as many for us. Either photographer, what kind of fields?
I think that's definitely true if you're looking to, like, say, be a staff photographer at a newspaper or something like that. But I would say most of the photographers that I know doing really well in the field are all freelance. You know, they have their own business, they're shooting weddings or editorial or sports or, you know, and I mean, they have a huge range of clients. And that work is not really going away. And I think if you're good at it and you are good at forming relationships with people, I think that's also, if you're going to be in freelance and whatever you're doing, you have to be good with people. And especially as a photographer, if you're trying to get some sort of reaction from who, you know, the person, the subject that you're working with or whatever, you have to be a people person. So I think that those skills, along with the technical skills of whatever your trade is, I think those are both equally important. But I wouldn't worry, like, yes, maybe you wouldn't be a staff photographer somewhere, but I think in terms of, in general, that photography jobs, there's a lot of work to go around.
My oldest is a photographer at Kellogg.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing she ever wanted to do was be a blend photographer, so I can't get her to get like freelance and that makes some extra money to get out of my basement. She is in my basement. Literally in my basement, so, but everyone likes to do a little.
Yeah, well, that's interesting you say that too, because when I was at Columbia College,
She went to Columbia.
she went to Columbia, see, and that is there, it's a very like art-related school, not art business-related,
Right.
I didn't feel like. And so we didn't have to take any business classes, we didn't have to, you know, kind of all those classes that I really wish they're really important skills if you want to go and do freelance work, you sort of have to know how to set all that up.
Right.
And Columbia College didn't teach you that. That's one thing that I regret about that. But I never thought I wanted to get into wedding photography because the program at Columbia College, they very much look down on wedding photography, and I eventually started doing it a few years ago, and I love it. So you never know. You never know.
talking then I'll.
So on the photography thing, it is harder to get clients to spring for photography because there's so much stock photography available, and there's different levels of that, and so I think the road for photographers is harder than it used to be. But there's agencies that can rep photographers that you can meet up with, and you can, take your portfolio directly to agencies, and they'll still look at, they still hire photographers for, campaign work, so that's, depending on, I don't know what your daughter's, specialty is, but definitely, having a website that, if you go to a design firm and, you want to show me, if you cold call design firms, they're not going to probably have much time to see you, but if you can refer them to a website and you've got samples of your work, then that's another way to get your name out there, so that, like, I might book, if it's got stuff that might be relevant to my clients, I can bookmark it and I can come back to it later, to get freelance work that way.
Yeah, I have two brothers who are photographers. One is a product, so kind of the catalog thing, but he has his own studio up in Michigan. Another one's an architectural photographer. So, I mean, there's a lot of specialties within that too that you can't do with an iPhone, And so, I mean, that's the good news,
Yeah.
right? Is that,
that's all my clients are the big photographers of Chicago. And they're intensely technical though. I mean, all of them have a studio, a rep, a certain and distinct style. They have a whole staff around them. It's a very competitive yet
yeah.
intense
Yeah.
It's a very branded business, not like photography. It's like one does comedy, only comedy.
Right.
You know, and all these
Right.
weird look, I find locations for them, so they want the 70s look, or they want,
Mhm.
so, and they make a lot of money,
But you
but
can be an
they're
assistant.
super competitive though.
But
you
you
know.
can get jobs as a freelance assistant for photographers.
Right,
if you're a
and
photographer.
everybody, yeah, who's an assistant cameraman usually tries to,
Right.
it's not necessarily that way, but
Right.
sometimes.
Sometimes you can get,
Yeah.
work that way.
Another question here.
This is kind of related to what you were talking about, in terms of the gap in your own education. And so I'm wondering if each of you could comment about the pros and cons of going to an art school.
Mhm.
Or all the time, or going to do art in a liberal arts college or in a large flagship public institution. What are the pros and cons of that, and what gaps are in either one of those? Or
The
opportunities?
pros, I guess, for very, very specific are you're getting exactly what you signed up for. The cons, at least for me, is it's more socially. You're not gonna get a big college experience, which means you're not gonna have all the things that come with going to a larger school, including more network possibilities. Sometimes I've never felt it hurts me, to be fair. Car design specifically is not really done in any big schools except for Cincinnati, and even then it's very insulated. So I can't say that one of my recommendations maybe is to go to a bigger school, and I have a lot of friends. I'd say like 50% of my friends did do that. They went to either a community college or a bigger school for a year or two, which is always a good thing to do. Looking back, it might have been something good for me to do too. I don't know, I'm kind of 50-50 on it, but it always led back to that more specific school. But that's kind of how I looked at it.
I liked being at Michigan because, partly because even though it was a giant school, the art school within it was 600 people, and so it was pretty small. So there was that smaller community right away. I'd say the other advantage is that if you're not sure you want to stay in art school, you don't have to transfer. You can just transfer out of the art school, but you're still at another place that has everything else. But then the other thing is that by taking classes in so many other disciplines across campus, you learn what I think is probably one of the more valuable skills, which is to be able to learn a subject quickly, which is what you have to do for, whatever your client. You have to learn you have to be a quick study in whatever it is and so by being out of the discipline of design or art or photography, whatever, I think it teaches you a quick thinking skill that is also, last time I checked, not in those drop-down menus that I keep looking for. But it is a big school compared to like a smaller.
Yeah, my CCS was 1,500 students, so small. OPR was the biggest school I ever went to. So
Yeah. I think Michigan's 30,000.
yeah, a little bigger.
I just wanted to add, I have a son that graduated here 3 years ago, and he decided to get into video and television production. And it's really hard to find public university that offers it, but Western Illinois has a excellent program if anyone's interested in that. We couldn't afford to send him to Columbia, that was the other choice, but the Western has one of the best small programs in the country for video, television, film production. And they teach you to explore, get that little art stuff.
And this is why we need to get the parent Facebook,
It's really
Facebook going, to kind of be able to get those types of informations out to everybody, right? Like, I found this school that,
And it's affordable, it's the
Right.
cheapest school in Illinois. It is like $8,000 for tuition. It's under 20 for room and board.
Any of the students here have any questions for our professionals? Nothing? What kind of, yeah.
What kind of jobs are there that students should be aware of?
It's kind of flat.
In the arts?
Yeah, in like the arts or like drawing, especially.
God, it's hard to, like you said, people just need you can't replace creativity, and so jobs change. And I would say, you spoke to photography and sort of, I guess, maybe it's getting a little bit harder because there's more armchair photographers and graphic design. I think like my girlfriend's a graphic designer, and graphic designer is a broad thing. It could be like, oh, my cousin designs placemats, but that's, you know, so that it's very broad, and some of those jobs get phased out. And what am I trying to formulate here? You find that out when you go to the school too, and there's nothing that can replace being good at being creative. I should say that too. If you're good at that, you'll find a place to go.
Are there any programs, I would assume this would fall into the industrial design group, especially as a category, especially when you're designing cars. The bridge between the arts and the sciences, you know, I mean, there's a lot of, obviously, aerodynamics and physics about the power of a plane or whatever. A boat, maybe you mentioned a boat earlier. Is there an area in there or a program that kind of blends both, you know, or it's a multidisciplinary sort of school that
There,
be more inventive?
I like to say jack of all trades, master of none. So like if you want to be for my discipline, I've always found that I work with engineers and I work with designers, and there's very little like strong engineering design overlap. Just part of it's just mentality, but also just part of it's there's different rooms. I mean, you work at Ford and there's a design center, and it's not engineers, they interface. So it's hard to say, like, there are programs that are engineering modeling programs, but that's what they are, they're engineering and not design.
Yeah, the only character that comes to my mind, and it's just an architectural background, is Calatrava. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
So that kind of blending of being able to sort of artistically interpret the structural elements of the building, or
Yeah, I can't speak to architecture. Someone
put
who can.
in some other
Being,
avenue.
yes, like I said, you have to speak the language. The better you speak the language, the better that works, but that also sometimes ends up being a hindrance. So I think, at least in if you know too much engineering, it holds you back from design and kind of doing what if, which is always good. You need those people. So it's a spectrum. You know, I don't really know anyone that's gone to get, say, an engineering school and then come to a design school, but that's not to say that it couldn't be that way. And like I said, for architecture, I think I can't speak to it. I think it's
So I
different.
think architecture is already the combination of art and science, but I do know that there are engineering programs are really looking now into left brain, right brain design and study because of exactly what you're saying. So I kind of disagree with you. I think engineers of the future are going to have to be creative design thinkers, or at least have background in that to be able to converse. I mean, everything is more interdisciplinary now. Things are not so siloed. And you have to be able to talk to many different people, and people you don't even know exist yet. You know, a profession that doesn't even exist, you're gonna have to talk to in 10 years. So having the ability to do that is what they're about. I know Northwestern's engineering school has an architecture and art program inside the School of Engineering right now, for that one reason, to get left brain thinkers and right brain thinkers to start to think holistically, you know. So,
Yeah, so that's where I totally agree with you, and I can understand it from the architectural
Yeah.
standpoint. But where's that other, is there another program, is there other schools that are sort of looking into that in different disciplines? And I guess that's,
I mean, I can't tell you all the schools that are doing that, but I know Northwestern has a program, and Stanford. All the big schools are really going in that direction with their engineering programs, because they've realized that by not getting creative, helping students to be creative thinkers and critical thinkers in many different ways, they're kind of missing innovation opportunities.
The one program that this makes me think of, it's a master's program, but I think it's at Boulder in Colorado. They do a combined MBA and MFA. So that's another, and I just found that from, you know, looking online. So I would look if there's something specific that you're interested in, because that's another, I mean, like you're saying, it's like creative, but you're also learning the business side of it too. So I mean, I think something like that would be an amazing
Yeah.
program to do.
And Michigan definitely had a thing where the engineers came over to the art school, which was great for the art school because the engineers had all the money. And so, I mean, like really, like all of the money, except the football team. And so I know that they've got their buildings are closed. So they definitely were trying to do projects together, which I think you know, some of the biomedical stuff with those kind of engineering, they definitely came over and worked with the art school.
Clemson does that too. They have a program I think it's every year they come out with a concept car that they do in conjunction with Art Center in Pasadena. So that's probably the closest it gets for me. I mean, so it's definitely out there. I can't speak to engineering degrees because I didn't get them, but
The Illinois Wesleyan has the design, like I said before, technology and entrepreneurship, but you can major more in engineering. You can say, I want to be more design, or you can say, we want more entrepreneurship. You actually have you can request more concentration, they call it.
Oh, okay.
So that's one of the schools, and there's a few more that I did that I can put on the blog. I have them at home. It's a new hybrid thing they're doing with a lot of these schools to create more broader interest, I guess.
So, while we're waiting, we have a little bit of time while we wait for people to filter in. One thing I'd like to ask you guys is, so you're now in the position to hire, most likely, hire artists coming up out of schools. Beyond the portfolio, what type of skills are you looking for? What types or skills or personality traits are you looking for from artists beyond the portfolio?
communication. Can you speak publicly? How do you present yourself? I don't have another way to say it. Are you weird, or can you interface with? Can we put you in front of a client? Can you interface? Me specifically, I mean, I interface with clients every day. You need to be able to. Can you talk about what you're working on? Those kind of things. I mean, portfolio is the big one, and that's how we judge. I mean, I review portfolios for interns and stuff like that. That's how we judge. But the next step is to have you come in. Like, are you late? Are you well dressed? Are you well presented? Do you speak well? Can you get along with everybody? Especially, I work at a smaller firm, so it's a lot of being around the same people all the time. And if somebody doesn't mesh well, it shows. So.
Can you write a sentence, or am I going to have to read your emails before they go to clients? When you first start out, you're not going to work on the big projects. So and I work on the big projects and the small projects. So if it's updating the titles and phone numbers on someone's business card, you got to find something to love about that little puny project, because you get a lot of puny projects, whether you are the owner of the company or the intern or whatever. So, you got to find some slice of it that, you still find what it is that you've got to do to make it, or if it's somebody's small project, to you, it's the client's big project. So you've got to respect it, whether it's, just some, project, I can't believe my freshly minted BFA is going to this stupid business card. Well, it's that person's, promotion business card, so don't mess it up, take it seriously, because they do.
Yeah. And I think if you end up too, where I work now is, like I said, we're a really small staff, and I think if you end up working at a small place, you really will end up wearing a lot of hats. And so I think having sort of a broad range of skills is good. I mean, on any given day, I might be writing, I might be doing photography, I might be designing a new garden space, I might be talking with clients who come and shop at our farmers market. I mean, it is just a whole spectrum of things. And so I think then this might not be true if you're working in a bigger organization, but at least for smaller places, there are just so many things to be done, and there are never enough people. So I think being able to kind of jump from one thing to the next and be good at it and do it with a smile on your face I think that's really critical.
Yeah, somewhat what you said, all of you said, connecting with people, being able to write at a basic level. And also one thing I find is people should know what they don't know. And when the worst is the people who don't know what they don't know, and they think they know everything. So it's okay to ask questions, but to be interested and inquisitive, those are all the traits that you need to have.
All right, well, thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for your time.